Now what do we do?
We launch. We just go into it. Just balls to the walls. How's it going, everybody? My name is Paul Nurkkala. I'm joined by our co-host, John Graham, and we are kicking off this brand new podcast, and we have no idea what we're doing.
The Good Fight!
And we have no idea what we're doing. Not one bit. This podcast, the goal of which is to kind of start a conversation in professional drone work, both in FPV and in the cinematography side and the industrial side. And I don't know, maybe we'll go to space sometime down the line. Yeah. So what have we decided to call this show, Mr. John?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Good Flight podcast.
It's so good. I can't get over it.
You know, it's one of those things because there's a lot to talk about in the world of drones and the drone industry, but you know, there's a really good thing that's happening right now in the community with the FPV community, but also the professional cinematography community and the overlap there. And that's kind of what we want to talk about with this podcast is bring our experiences and talk about all the good flights we've had and even the bad flights, but generally just focus about good stories behind drones and really what they're doing in our lives, but our friends' lives and things like that.
Yeah, and so the goal ostensibly for this whole thing is to take a dive into professional drone usage, like on a very, very high level, and that could be anywhere from FPV and filming to cinematic to industrial use, all these things, and we feel like we have between us, and we'll kind of get into who each of us are, a pretty wide breadth of exposure to all of the world of professional drones, and we're excited to kind of dive into each of those aspects and pull out those good stories, those good flights, and figure out, just start a conversation on what all of this stuff is. And so we'll be doing interviews, we'll be doing segments on reacting to videos, we'll just be having a blast talking about the good flight.
Yeah, I think part of it too is exciting is that this is a journey that we're having. We said we have no idea, but we really don't. We have these future segments of the show that we might be, who knows, doing some live streaming from the actual drones themselves, or I could imagine already giving house tours with my little Tiny Whoop or something like that, and just having fun with it and interacting with you guys, the community, and just exploring together. So yeah, thank you for joining me here, and I think this is an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of add on to that, so this podcast is in two parts. There's a whole video segment, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing our faces, our silly faces, trying to figure out what we're doing, and then we're also doing a full audio version as well. I encourage you to watch either or both. I personally, like when I watch podcasts myself, I'm a huge fan of a whole bunch of different things, but I actually prefer to watch the audio version, or at least I use YouTube Premium, and I can download the whole podcast, and then I just go in and out of watching the video and just listening to it when I'm driving or traveling or something like that. I don't watch while I drive, but I have it there, that sort of thing. So it was a big it was important to me to have the podcast both recorded. So we're recording with our big old cameras with the whole nice setup and all that stuff, as well as getting just the audio version out. So, you can either consume it on YouTube, or I'll have a link to the opposing source for it down in the description or the show notes.
Yeah, and Paul, remind me to sit up straight and, do those things, because I listen to my podcasts. I don't watch podcasts. And most of the people I listen to talk about how they're, radio personalities, which means, what does that mean? It means you're ugly, So here I am. I'm trying to not be ugly on camera. Remind me to, stand up, sit up straight is what I'm trying to say.
I'm standing on purpose. It kind of gives me that extra flow, that extra energy. I'm kind of dancing around the mic over here. And speaking of
but it's
looking good,
cool.
like we're in the middle of our these strange
Oh,
times. So like I have like my hair is super long, my beard is uncut. It's a bad situation over here in terms of looking good. So please listen to the podcast. Don't watch it.
yeah, we'll do both because I think, the video is really cool because obviously with drones and what we do, it's super involved with video, right? It's not they sound cool, but we really want to see what they can create and capture. So we're going to be sharing videos, on the podcast as well. We'll be able to pull in videos from the community, user videos, and give reactions to FPV videos, things like that.
Not
We'll be
just
able to share.
FPV.
Yeah, not just FPV, but we'll be able to share some, some of the content that I've made or some of my friends have made, and show some behind the scenes, which is really cool. Things that I haven't shared before, and will be shared here on this show for the first time.
Yeah, speaking of behind the scenes, I want to hear a little bit more about what behind the scenes of John is. Tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? How'd you get involved in drones, and what do you like? What qualifies you to have a podcast?
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, that's a lot. I'm gonna try my best to answer this quickly because I want some of my stories and experiences to come out through our future show. So I'm gonna, but I'll do the best I can. So my name is John Graham. I'm a professional aerial cinematographer. I have my Part 107 since it came out. But before that, I was working in the industry. And making films with drones. So I started, but prior to doing that, I was always into flying remote control helicopters and planes and stuff for fun.
Before we go on, is there anything that you've shot that we might have heard of?
Yeah, absolutely. I've shot I've been lucky enough and to work with some great people, but shot some amazing movies and TV shows. I worked on one of my favorite pieces I worked on is The Greatest Showman. We have a drone catch that was like the first time that was done in cinematic history. That I was the pilot on that one. I've worked on TV shows like Mr. Robot, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Billions.
Like this guy
Um,
gets around. I mean, like these are huge, huge multi-million dollar productions. Like John is crazy cool. All right, back to who you
yeah,
are.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so so we'll get into a little bit about the working on shows like that and what it means to me in a little bit. But really, I started, flying for the fun of it. Really, I remember growing up and always like asking for a helicopter and things like that for Christmas. And honestly, like I never got a helicopter for Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because I used to break things a lot too. But I never got that helicopter, so it wasn't until I was like actually an adult after college where I was like, okay, I'm gonna like get into something. I'm gonna find a hobby I love, and so I bought like a nice. I got into collective pitch helis, like that was like what I entered. Like yes, some like little micro CP helis that that allowed you to do some like acrobatics and things. Before GPS and before they were just like kind of fly by wire, and it was a lot of fun. I always tell people start small because they're some of the most difficult things to fly, and little CP micro CP heli is like probably still the hardest thing, one of the things to fly. So yeah, I got involved with that. I was always into photography. So even in high school and college, I took photography classes, darkroom photography. So I had the fundamentals, I had those basics, and a passion for composition. I was flying helis, always into photography, and at the time I was also making websites. So I was doing some web design, and I said, "Hey, I could instead of looking for stock images and photos, I can create it myself." So how great does that sound? So I bought a Phantom 2, uh, put a GoPro on there and started making some really cool content for websites. And then it wasn't long after that that I said, screw websites. I'm just going to look at video. This is where the fun is. And started making content for some YouTube channels and myself and just kind of focus on, that journey, which then brought me to New York City, working in that market. That's really where I got a lot of my experience working on set.
Awesome. Cool. And I mean, and along the way, like, I can't believe that I mean, the Phantom 2, that was before gimbals were a thing even. So like your early adoption, like you're trying to figure out how to make it happen from the very beginning. Like what
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've obviously like now I've met people in the in the industry. I'm like who were like really OGs that have been doing this for like ever. It seems
yeah.
like, but and we're gonna actually talk with some of those people too, hopefully. But yeah, I felt like I was actually kind of late to the game. I remember, and I'm
Hmm.
not trying to discourage anybody who's like interested in getting involved because it's a huge growing market, and there's never a good time. There's always a good time to get into drones, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Phantom 2 out of the box like didn't do what I wanted to do. So I remember seeing this I remember a distinctive video about this drone flying through Alaska, and it was capturing these amazing landscape shots that were just like they just like blew my mind.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Stuff
wow, how
you'd
did they
only
do that?
see from a helicopter until now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just like these like, you know, beautiful it was I mean, it's location, location, location. That's what I learned now, but it looked fantastic, and it totally, seduced me, and the dude was lucky enough or thank God he put in the description of his Vimeo what he used to capture this,
Nice.
and he linked to this company called DSLR Pros, which they're still around,
Yeah, I think so. I think I've
but
heard of that.
at the time they were anyway, at the time, that was, like, the place to get a modified DJI drone, so they sold these kits that were basically modified Phantom 2s. So it had the gimbal bolted on. And at that time, I didn't know anything about quadcopters. I was like a helicopter guy. And there was a lot of technology that seemed like they had to hack these things together to make work. And DSLR Pros had this thing called like a Cannes like cinema edition Phantom 2, which I think I spent like $6,000 on or
Jeez.
five. It was a lot of money, but I was like, you know what, that's my investment, and it gave me everything I needed to like you know show up to a job and multiple batteries and a Pelican case. I still have it, so
Nice.
yeah, I don't know what it's worth now, but not nothing. But
It's worth the memories that you've developed along the way.
yeah, I still have it, and so that I chose to go that route because I wanted to focus on filmmaking, and I love I'm recording this podcast in my drone studio on my workbench, surrounded by tools and parts and broken drones. Now I feel comfortable, and I love doing that. But at the time, honestly, I wasn't super comfortable, you know, building that myself. So
So you fly big cinema rigs, you fly FPV too?
yeah, absolutely. So we fly some of the biggest and like baddest drones
Yeah.
in the
Like
world,
what's
honestly.
your
And
biggest like what's your most expensive flying machine at any time? That's a question that I always like to ask, and I think people always want to know is like how much have you been responsible for at any one moment in the air?
yeah,
Insurance
no,
aside.
yeah, that's a big question. Responsible. I mean, these things are big enough where it's like we have to protect people's lives essentially, and the people's lives that we're filming are like $1 million actors and
Yeah.
actresses. So that's a lot of responsibility. That's much more, and it's always like safety is like obviously the biggest priority for what I try to do and for what we should be doing. So okay, so to answer your question, sometimes the drone in the sky is worth like $140,000.
That's that's the price of my home. Like my house I
Really?
bought for $145,000.
I know. I drive a Honda S2000 that's worth like 7 grand, and some of the lenses that we're flying on these cameras are like $35,000 for a lens. But
But
it's not my stuff.
but how do you go from a Phantom 2 with a GoPro strap to the bottom to flying $140,000
It's the
aerial
same
cinema
controls,
machine?
Eric. It's like the same thing. You just do the same thing.
It just if you can fly a Phantom, you can fly an Ari
Yeah,
with
up means
a
up and right means right.
so
No, but to answer your yeah, so a lot of times what happens, these drones get really the actual aircraft itself, a lot of times we're flying, if just the drone is like, it could be a 30 to $50,000
yeah.
aircraft. It's the cost that goes into it is a lot of the support equipment. So the camera, so a lot of times we fly an Ari Alexa Mini or a Red Helium, whatever the show is asking for us to shoot, or whatever I guess specifically the DP is asking for us to shoot on. That's what we try to fly.
Mhm.
So yeah, so our drones, they have 30-inch props, 8 of them. It's a our drone, our primary heavy lift drone is manufactured by a company called BFD Systems, based out of Philadelphia, and those guys are great. We're partnered with them,
They're going to be on the
so we
show
have.
before too long.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. We'll probably be like recording from their like workshop. They have a bunch of great people that work there, and I know they would be stoked about that for sure. So, but yeah, so we've partnered with them, and we're that's why I can like guarantee you we have like the most badass drone out there, because it's something we're constantly developing together and making what we want. But yeah,
And
so
like,
I fly.
even at the space that you play in, I remember you saying at one point that like you can't buy something off the shelf to do this, like because of like restrictions and weight limits and stuff like that. Like you have to go to that custom solution to get the product that your clients are wanting, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what we choose to do to kind of perform at the highest level we know possible. So, but there are systems that you can buy off the shelf, made by DJI, made by Alta, that may not that maybe can do the job, but maybe it's not legally doing the job because it's too heavy, or maybe you're flying an aircraft that's like grossly overweight.
Mm,
So you're flying an aircraft that's not rated to fly that much weight that you want to fly. So to do it safely, we are building our heavy lift drones that are to spec and that are underweight. So that's the biggest thing, and that's something I definitely want to talk about in the future. Is like
nice.
flying overweight. What's happening in our industry? What are the things that like we know that's happening that maybe like customers don't know,
Right.
or the FAA doesn't care about or do care about? Who knows? Those are some of the issues that we want to talk about too.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so we fly heavy lift drones. We fly a lot of times it's DJI Inspire 2 products. That's a great machine. The Greatest Showman, for instance, was shot on Inspire 2. Mr. Robot, we shot on Inspire 2 and a heavy lift. But um, it depends on excuse me, it depends on, I just burped.
It's all good. We
Dude, we got
found
to
our
get,
show opener.
yeah,
You're turning red.
I'm like, crap. Yeah, we got to talk about, let's get to the meat of the discussion. Are we cursing? Are we burping? Are we farting?
Oh
What's the
yeah,
deal?
no, 100%. Nothing is off limits, I think. Well, maybe not nothing, but most things.
Yeah, okay. We'll find the limit when we hit it. That's like what I learned about drones. It's like you find the limit when you reach the limit, and then you like ratchet it back a notch, and there you are. That's the sweet spot. So,
Awesome.
we fly a lot of Inspire 2s for work. It's a great machine. Like I love DJI products. And yeah, now we're getting more and
Sponsorship
more.
location available right here.
Yeah. If only, that'd be great. But more and more now, we're being asked to fly FPV style shots for clients, which is really cool.
Mhm.
So my passion and my hobby of FPV is like kind of integrating with what we're doing for work. So I've flown FPV for clients like Ferrari and Royal Caribbean and Chevy. So we're doing some really cool, exciting stuff with FPV drones. So I fly a Beast class drone that Catalyst Machine Works rigged up for me. So I also fly, 5-inch quads. I got some on the back shelf there, which they're I don't know. Most of them are probably broken, but yeah,
If you're not crashing, you're not pushing hard enough.
yeah, I love FPV. Let's be honest, it's like the most fun you can have, like on the sticks.
Yeah,
It's an absolute release for me.
good.
So it's the best, I think.
Awesome.
It's more fun than flying the big expensive rigs for sure. It's like that put the dollar amount aside. It's like where do you want to have fun? Like let's rip some packs.
Sweet.
So yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for giving me that intro, or giving everybody that intro. Like it's you don't have like the craziest big social presence, which we're working on fixing for John. But like there's so many cool people like John kind of behind the scenes that are doing all of these awesome productions and things that just are staying out of that limelight. And I think part of what this whole show is going to be is to use me and John's experience to pull those people to the forefront and to celebrate the stories that they're making, even if it's not like the story that they're trying to produce. Does that make sense? It's how do we, kind of start telling the stories of what's going on behind the scenes in professional FPV.
Yeah, I like to think of my social media as a clean slate, you know what I mean? It's like,
And that way
I
it will stay forever.
maybe, I don't know, I'm actually excited to share some of this stuff because for a long time, it's like there's a very specific niche of a market, I think, even in the cinema community. Um, but there hasn't always been an audience for it. So yeah, I'm excited to share. We have like hundreds of like photos of us standing with like drones and stuff like that I just never post.
Right.
And honestly, if it's like not instant, then I'm like, why post it? You know what? I'm just gonna start doing it, and it'll be
There
fun.
you go.
It'll be fun for everybody.
Good. And then I guess I'll give myself a quick introduction. So
Please do.
yeah, no. So my name is Paul Nurkkala. I am a professional drone racer slash content creator slash cinematographer using FPV kind of in all of those aspects. So in FPV and drone racing, I became the 2018 Drone Racing League World Champion that was 2018, and have continued to compete and build a career in racing drones. But having that experience also let me with the opportunity to create content here on YouTube. So, I make videos actually right now, especially during the strange times we found ourselves in April of 2020. I'm putting out daily content, actually pushing out different tutorials and ideas and reviewing cameras and quads and stuff like that, and having a really good time doing it. And that's all been informed by my experience in drone racing. And then finally, I also work as a professional video person with FPV drones. Not as much right in this moment, but in the past and moving on into the future, I've had the opportunity to work with brands like Polaris, with Red Bull Media House, with Mini Cooper USA, Jim Beam Bourbon of all things, and just continued to find new ways to use the storytelling power of high performance drones. And high performance could mean like super flippy floppy freestyly chasing cars, or down to really really small precision controls to fly through, like in like a museum, for example, or something like that. And using kind of that, my experience having spent time developing content and racing drones to inform my ability to fly cinematically for FPV. My story started in at Christmas of 2014. Unlike John, I did get a drone for Christmas.
What a amazing parents. This is
It
shout
wasn't
out to all the
it,
parents
it
out
wasn't
there.
my parents. It was my in-laws. So it had to, at least it wasn't, but they gave me a drone for Christmas. I flew it. I think I broke it the same day. And at the time I was practicing as a software engineer. I worked full time as a software engineer, and I was like, I kind of am an engineer. I should be able to figure out how to fix this. So I went online. I got a YouTube university education in drone repair. And while I was figuring out how to fix that Hoobson X4 tiny little micro Walmart grade drone,
Mhm.
I stumbled across drone racing. There's this video of these guys in France flying through the woods with GoPros and LEDs on their quads. And I remember sitting there at my office, and I'm like, I have to do that.
Yeah, we did that.
There was no question, like at that moment, like I knew I was going to be doing drone racing. In June of that same year, I won my first race. The next year I qualified for the United States Nationals. I got second at the United States Nationals, moved on, got second at the Drone Sports Association Worlds, and then got a call from the Drone Racing League to compete on their show, which at the time was on ESPN, and is now broadcast on NBC. And so it's been this crazy ride of from never having touched anything RC, because that was not something that my family was interested in, to now I have a full-time, well, I don't have a full-time gig. And I think there were some points where my in-laws who gave me that first drone were a little bit nervous about that fact. Like,
Oh, yeah,
uh,
I've been there.
Nick's just playing with drones in the corner again,
Yep.
and but it's all come full circle, and we've had the ability to travel the world, for drones. Like there's a phrase, and I'm gonna get in trouble probably from my parents for saying this, because they're probably gonna end up watching this, but like there's a lot of moments where I'm just sitting somewhere on a shoot, or like in the mountains of Switzerland. I just sit down. I'm just like, fucking drones. That's what brought me here, and it's really really cool to kind of see how that's impacted my life over the last only 5 years. What's going to happen in the next 10, 20, 30. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were you racing anything before racing drones, or well, like even video games, or like what was the correlation between racing? What attracted you about racing there?
That's a great question. I think so. I didn't ever really race anything before. I wasn't like a running racer, or driving cars or karts or anything like that. I did. I was I have been a lifelong athlete. Doesn't look like it right now, quarantine bod, but it's the I I played
Chronobot.
I played sports, growing up. So like there was a kind of competitive edge. But the thing that attracted me the most about racing is that racing is a precision sport, right? It's
Mm,
something where it's about continual self improvement. When if you've ever gone to like a foot race, like where you like run a 5K with a bunch of people, like nobody's out there. People aren't out there to compete against each other. They're there to compete against themselves. And even like when you pass somebody at a foot race, you get encouragement from other people, like, good job, you're doing better than you expected, like, keep it up, that sort of thing. And it's really, that aspect, that self improvement, that push yourself, that best yourself aspect of racing is what got me excited about it.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, your videos have been inspiring me. I mean, like millions of people out there, we've all seen NURK's videos. You've done a fantastic job marketing yourself, but honestly, pushing yourself to create this content that no one else is really doing, and you're often the leader of a certain style or a technique, or doing honestly probably doing something crazy, like flying through a flamethrower or something like that. So congratulations, man. You've done, like, you are an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to millions of other people out there. So nice job. Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the future. Like, what are some things that you think we'll get into, in the future?
Yeah, so I guess I can probably speak mostly to the FPV side. I'd love to hear your side from the cinematic or the big drone heavy lift side. Is I think that we're starting to bump up against the limits of cameras in FPV, right? So GoPro is a great camera. It does shoot at 4K, but when you try to line it up against, an Ari or a Red, and put it on a, you know, upres it to 6K and play it back in IMAX surround, like all of a sudden that image is going to fall apart pretty quickly. So starting to see people play around with how do we put a nicer camera onto a high performance machine and fly it like we would a racing drone, I think that's going to be, I think the next like 3 or 4 years, we're going to see a lot of different experiments and ways that people are playing around with pushing smaller or better, bigger, maybe not necessarily bigger, but like higher performing cameras into these kinds of machines that we're currently flying. So waiting on things like the Red Komodo and maybe like a Zcam E2 style cameras, to see what people do with those on like Beast class or like slightly smaller machines, to use high performance drones to film the way we do with FPV, but at a much higher quality image.
Yeah, I always say, like, when people do ask, what's the future of drones? Long story short, they're getting really big, they're getting a lot bigger, and then they're also getting like a lot smaller. So it's like there's the tiny whip technology, it blows my mind
Yeah.
now, with these little brushless motors and the same hand. Like, I see people flying around themselves in a lawn chair with like something they made in their garage. So the capabilities, I think, is like pretty spectacular for our industry, and I hope we cover some of that stuff too.
Oh, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about what's next with FPV drones. What are you seeing as coming up in the next few years for heavy lift?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's kind of the same type of thing. We're constantly challenging ourselves, and the directors of photography are challenging us with cameras that we can fly. So, believe it or not, sometimes like an Alexa Mini is like not good enough. So, an Alexa Mini it's like my favorite camera. It's like a $60,000 body, made by one of the best camera companies in the world, but they also make, that's like their small little, there's their mini camera. So there's other cameras out
So
there made by
you
Sony.
say small, but like it's still a pretty big camera compared to
Yeah,
what a
it's
lot
a
of
big
us
camera.
like. Remember, a big camera for me is a GoPro right now. Like,
Yeah, it's a big camera that, yeah, that can do big things. So but yeah, a lot of these times you look at the camera on a movie that they're using on a film set or a movie, and it might even be an Alexa Mini. It's this big, but they put on all this gack onto the camera, and that makes it this big, which a lot of it is the lens, but a lot of it is equipment for a first AC or a second AC to help with camera settings and pull focus and video transmission equipment, and a thing that tells you how far the object, there's all types of stuff, which I don't really get into, right? We strip all that down, we take the Alexa Mini, we most likely we put on the Movi Pro, and
which is a
we
gimbal.
fly it. Yeah, which is the gimbal, which is how we point the camera. And yeah, so but we're challenged with putting bigger lenses on there, like anamorphic lenses, which are a specific type of glass that gives you a certain look, which you often see on the A or B camera for these movies. There's also some new camera technology out there by Sony. The Sony Venice is a fantastic camera. So it's like, how do we fly this bigger camera on our drone? And a lot of that is by shaving off weight. So we're doing some really exciting things there to fly a Sony Venice under 55 pounds and things like that. That 55-pound limit for us is like, it's kind of like stock car racing. So it's the ultimate barrier that we try to maintain, and we try to meet that. And yeah, so that's part of it where we're going. Flying longer is always a challenge. So when new batteries come out, we're testing out those technologies. We're actually using smaller high volt batteries now. Potentially will fly longer. So it's. I don't think there's as much changing in the heavy lift game as there is at FPV, and I think uh, that's true if you look at other industries like the car community. So you see the hobbyists and the racers develop technology and kind of push the technology forward, and then eventually you start to see manufacture or something like that technology kind of like slipped into the manufacturer pipeline on how they're creating these products. I think a lot of that's true with filmmaking. It's filmmaking is actually from what I'm learning all the time, is like it's an old school industry. So there's not a huge amount of progression there, and things are done a certain way, which is sometimes honestly the biggest innovation in heavy lift cinematography or professional drones has nothing to do with the drone itself. Maybe it's the other equipment that goes along with it, or the politics behind it, like union versus non-union labor, which is a huge thing we'll get into. So who knows?
And I've heard a lot of times that the cinema industry is very focused on trust based kinds of things. Like it's you don't people don't use like the DJI Ronin 2 because it's only a couple years old, where like the Movi Pro has been around for so much longer that now like they just won't trust something that hasn't been as tested and as experienced as something else. So I can see how if you're from an old school perspective, using a new-ish school technology like drones is a double challenge, right? It's like, oh my gosh, now we're trying to introduce a whole new way of thinking about filmmaking to people that
Right.
still want to use like the little wheel things. Like it's like,
Yeah, the
holy,
wheels. I mean, actually, that's a thing. We're using wheels to control our heavy lift cameras now. That's like a new innovative thing. So you just hit on
yeah,
something. But yeah, it's taking the old school and implementing it into how we do our work to kind of integrate, really. So you can control the Movi Pro with the new FreeFly wheels, which work fantastic. I'm learning the wheels, how to become a better I'm a stick guy,
yeah.
obviously. But yeah, so the wheels are a new tool that we're not only trying to become experts at, quote unquote experts. I mean, people have been doing that for like, and in business for like 30 years.
Right.
So It's hard to just step up and master that, but we're trying to provide that. But you mentioned the Ronin 2 as an example of like new technology, or maybe even specifically DJI
Mhm.
technology coming into the film industry. I don't see that. DJI is an incredible company, and you're probably going to hear me say that all the time. They like blow my mind.
Sponsorship
They,
here.
they blow my mind. Yeah, as much as I like, talk shit on DJI, it's like they are an amazing company, and they're the reason why we're able to capture a lot of these shots. The Ronin 2 is incredible. It's being used all the time on films, Mr. Robot, all these shows that we'll mention. They're the Ronin 2 is might be on set, so it might be in a closet somewhere, but it's a small remote head, which is very beefy in a sense of what and the size. The motors are incredibly strong, stronger than the FreeFly Mobi Pro, and but it's not as light. So the Movi Pro weighs a lot less. It's like 9 pounds. The Ronin 2 is like 12.5 pounds. And
That
that
adds
weight
up
right
so fast when you're putting it on a drone where you can only put 55 pounds on it,
yeah,
or
exactly. So it's
55
like not,
flying pounds.
yeah. So it's like, okay, there goes that option. So, yeah, so there's a lot we have to do to kind of help the showrunners or the people that are the producers that are inevitably buying our services, to help them understand what we can provide and why the equipment that we're suggesting is worth it.
And what
So
the legalities of those situations are
right.
and all that stuff. And that can
Yep.
only come through experience and practice and having just been around, showing these are what you can and can't use.
Yeah. Yeah. And so exactly. And you mentioned trust. So it's like, yeah, it is a lot about trust. And like, it's like, if you can't make it, we live in the business where it's like, if you make one too many mistakes, like you probably no longer working very often. So, when you're flying, like, flying blenders, you don't want to make, a mess. So,
Oh, jeez.
yeah. So, but, we have some stories too. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that we'll talk to also have some stories.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm wondering, like, how is this podcast going to go? Are we going to be incriminating ourselves here, or what's the deal, Nurk?
I mean, if anybody is a master at incriminating themselves, it's me, right? Think
Yeah.
about like the training video, but I think that's an interesting problem to solve. Though, is how do you work around the rules that are in place, but still get some incredible shots? I think you were telling me at one point about a shot where you needed to go over top of somebody.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how did you get around the requirement that you can't fly over top of someone, but
Mhm.
still achieve the kinds of shots that you're being asked to get?
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So, and well, pretty much uh, in every single job before we fly, we have a safety meeting with everybody on set. So we call everybody in to listen to this short spiel about what we can and cannot do safely, and what we can and cannot do legally. So we always mentioned we can't fly over people. There is a waiver that's floating out there for that can allow you to do that, but it's honestly it's not. We just don't. We don't like to set the precedent that we can, and then next thing you know, you're being asked to do something where it's like uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So we say we can't fly over people, which obviously the FAA says you can't, so we don't. So, but when the DP asks you to pull off a specific shot, it's like I think of a lot of what we do is problem solving, and you listen and you try to understand what the intent of what the creative intent is, without like reading the script, because we never really get that
Yeah.
information. And sometimes we see a previs or a rendering of what the shot will be or what they want, but a lot of times it's just verbal.
Mhm.
And this is a great story. I love this because it actually like worked out. So the director of photography of Mr. Robot, which I've now mentioned a few times during this show, I love it. We're getting it off the. We'll talk about something else next time, but yeah. So Todd Campbell is an incredible director, and I worked with them on season 2. Did some really cool work on season 2, and then this was season 3. I get a call asking to get a specific shot, which they wanted the camera to pass directly over the head of BD Wong, one of the actors on the show, and in a sense where it just kind of flies over the head and continues to fly out. And in season 2, we used a heavy lift system with like a red helium 8K on probably like ultra primes or some like lens or camera setting that was super high resolution camera, 8K 8K.
Yeah.
And that was the request, so we fulfilled it, and that's great. But you can't fly a heavy lift drone over somebody's head for multiple reasons. Take the FAA legal requirements out of it. It's stupid. It's not safe. You can chop off somebody's like fingers or hand or whatever with these propellers. But one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is the incredible amount of wind that is created from these flying machines.
Yeah.
So you're offsetting 55 pounds of weight with essentially that much amount of wind. I don't know how much wind that is,
It's a
but
lot.
it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, stick your
It's a
hand out
lot.
the window at 55 miles an hour. Wait, that
Yeah,
doesn't even make sense because it has nothing to do with speed. But yeah, it would be ludicrous.
maybe 100 miles an hour.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
If you know what that is, let us know. I guess you could measure it, but that's no fun.
That's not what this is
So
about.
yeah, so it's an incredible amount of wind, which blows hair, it blows dust, it blows everything. It can blow lights over on set if they're not bagged, and so that wasn't a reality. We've worked with we worked with the in the past on The Greatest Showman on the drone catch, and this is something that I always kind of like keep in my back pocket to pitch a creative person, and hey, like we can use the tool this way too. We don't just have to get like high and wides of like the bridge. We could fly through the bridge, or we could bring the
Yeah.
camera like into the car or something. Like, yeah, think about it and just like let me know, and then like walk away. But Todd Campbell like basically saw this as a solution to a problem where we could take the Inspire 2 drone and instead of flying it directly over the actor's head, we could handhold it over the actor's head. So it's something that my team and I have been practicing for like years. We've been doing this. We have a couple demos out there, and we've done it for the Greatest Showman and other shows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's a thing, but it's always different. So
Yeah. I mean,
this
like,
was
what if the actor changes height? Like, what if you get a really tall actor? You just have to like find a superhumanly tall grip to carry it over top of him. Like,
yeah, we do. We have a guy. He's like 6'5". So yeah. So exactly, and we call him the drone diddler. That's his title on the call sheet. That's not true. He's the drone tech,
oh,
but he'll like that, I think, because it's a classic name.
of
We
course.
you have to have a nickname
Yeah.
in this business.
Yeah.
So the diddler is like 6'5", and he is carrying the drone. We built some landing gear rigging with some carbon fiber to allow you to hold this camera and to slowly do the gimbal walk, and then slowly release the camera as it travels actually over the head, not just over the head, but actually through the hair of the actor.
Jeez.
The camera like passes like through the hair, which actually was a mistake, but Sam Ishmael and Todd Campbell, like when they saw that take, they like lost their shit
Nice.
and we're like, that's incredible. And like, we're like, wow, fuck, like too low, right? It's like too close. But after the camera passes through the hair, it kind of takes off. And the shot, what I'm talking about was, I think it was episode 2 or 3 of season 3. It was like the opening shot of the credits. That's amazing. And one of the things that I guess I remember thinking was like, what is this shot of, like on the day? We're like, what is this shot? What are we
Yeah.
doing?
So
Like,
going back to your beginning point was like you were saying like, yeah, I'm willing to talk about it, but like unless there's a justification to add the extra element of danger, almost like what's the point? And so what you're saying is now this once you finally saw the shot, that question was kind of answered, right?
yeah, absolutely. You're like, these guys are geniuses, and like, because it's basically what the shot is in the story, which again, like we only have certain access to the story. And you can only ask so many questions when you're like, talking to essentially as your boss,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, you don't want to be an idiot and you want to seal the deal and do the job.
And you're kinda doing
Um,
sales on site too, right? You wanna get the call back for the next thing too, so you've gotta kinda like,
oh, yeah.
"Yeah, I can totally do that and actually deliver on that," but without but if you say no too many times, they're just gonna go find someone else to say yes, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly. So there's always somebody, some Jerry that's gonna like try it for you, and they might not do it safely. So like I almost feel obligated to to tell them what the risks are,
Right,
just like any like partner,
right.
So yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times they don't know what the technical capabilities are. So we're always kind of updating what the, product specs are, or we're selling a solution one over the other. And then
Yeah,
inevitably I like to kind of lay out two or three options and have them make it their own, help them make good
yeah,
decisions type of thing.
yeah. It's good
That's my
negotiation skills.
yeah. So, yeah, so in this instance, like, yeah, so here's the solution. So we have this drone throw. So it's not a catch, it's actually a drone throw,
Mhm.
which we call. And when you see the shot in the episode, it's amazing because at that time, like one of the major characters that was on for like 3 or 4 seasons, is it 4 seasons or 3 seasons? Was just killed, and
Oh,
by this arch nemesis. So you're actually like seeing the camera pass through the head essentially of BD Wong's character as he basically gives Elliot, the main character Elliot, like I'm coming to get you, Elliot, and the camera flies through the head of BD Wong, tilts down to the ocean, and then tilts up to reveal like New York City, which was really cool. And then it goes, Mr. Robot.
nice.
So yeah, that was like hell yeah. You watch it, you're like hell yeah, and you get all fired up, and then
Yeah.
like you're just sitting on your couch at the end of the day with your dog and your wife's not even interested anymore, and
Like, "Yeah, cool,
whatever.
you made a shot." You're just like, "That's fucking amazing." It's just like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, cool. It's a
yep.
drone shot.
And I
Thank
don't post about it on my Instagram, and it just go, it's all good.
you." But you gotta take joy in your own work. I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
takeaway is that you came up with a solution, a creative solution for a hard problem and said, "This is how we're gonna do it," and you're satisfied with the work. That's all that matters at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's not that doesn't always happen like that. So, but that was a lucky enough opportunity where it worked out technically,
Yeah.
and that we pulled it off. And then we actually made the show better than what you expected.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and it wasn't easy. It was a couple of takes actually,
Yeah, what
which
challenges are involved with that? Like, what makes it easy? What makes it hard? What went well? What didn't?
yeah. So the actual throw is tough because these drones, the DJI drones, unlike the racing quads, they fly in certain modes. So there's GPS mode, which I'd recommend for a lot of beginners that want to fly in GPS mode. But in most of the flights that I do with DJI products, or even on our heavy lift um, systems that use the DJI flight controller, is Addy mode, which is basically like attitude mode,
Mhm.
which might be a little bit foreign to like a lot of the FPV guys. Addy mode is basically, I like to say, it's like, or maybe I think I heard you say it, Nurk, at one time. It's like sliding a hockey puck around.
Yeah.
Do you say that?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. It's kind of like angle mode in beta flight, but it helps you out on the height axis. Like it will still maintain altitude,
Yeah.
but you push it forward and let go, and it'll just kind of keep scooting under momentum, but it will
Right. Or
eventually
wind.
slow down and stop. It won't actively fight against that momentum.
Yeah. So I use that. I've always used Addy mode, even in that Phantom 2 days, baby,
Yeah,
where it was just like trying to get that buttery shot. So like it's more of a manual flight operation, but it gives you a little bit smoother inputs, and you're kind of sailing the drone
yeah.
rather than flying it by coordinate
You can fly it
based.
inside too because there's no GPS involved in the inside. Like it just you'll just let it kind of cruise indoors.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to flying in that mode, and I also tend to like turn well we're getting into some of like the tips and tricks, but I
Yeah.
turn all of the sensors off
Yep.
essentially on
Yep.
these drones because you don't want them to inhibit your shot. Like this shot wouldn't have been possible with any sensors on board.
Right.
They would have just screamed at you and stopped, and you would have looked like an idiot. So you turn those off as soon as you get the drone. You just turn them off,
Yep.
and then you also turn down things like braking and some of those other settings that are in the DJI units to just make that make that drone fly a little bit smoother.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Like, I mean, looking at, again, at just like figuring out, all of the stuff that could, well, a lot of the stuff that goes into flying drones professionally isn't just the flying part, right? It's about how do you work around regulations? How do you work around, limitations of technology and stuff like that. And so hearing little stories like that of how you know, took a look at that problem, found a creative solution, and then overcame it, I think is exactly the kind of story that we want to be telling here on this show. I think it's like
Okay,
that
cool.
just to me was like the perfect example of that.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot more where that came from. There's a lot of stories out there, good and bad. I can't wait to get into them and to hear other stories that other people have, and it's gonna be great. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I'm just like, it's exciting just thinking about it right now. I want to get into it. So
Oh yeah, and not just stories from us, but stories from many many other creators and people in this industry that I'm sure we'll come up with some really interesting things to see. I'm gonna do a screen recording here on my end, and I'm gonna show you a video from YouTube. Unfortunately, we probably can't play the audio, but this is something I was shown this a few days ago. I'm just gonna share my screen to you. This is something that I saw a
okay,
few days ago that I was
all right,
just like, "Holy cow!" For FPV, like, and so I think a part of some of the segments that we want to do here in the future are kind of like, drone pilots react sort of stuff. And this was one where I was just like, I'm not even sure how he did it yet. So you let me know what you
okay,
think.
cool. Right away, it looks like we're in Europe or somewhere that's not
I think it's China. I think the pilot
okay.
is
China,
Chinese.
good. That building's amazing.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
looks
and
like
look
a
at the
video.
texture too. So what are you
Yeah,
seeing?
right.
Before we go on, we should describe for the audio listeners.
Okay, yeah. So we're looking at three large buildings, probably 50 stories or so, with like over. We're looking straight at them. There's one, two, three buildings stacked next to each other, but the architecture is amazing. It's like a building from the future, like something out of Tron.
And
I
and
see.
this shot
Yeah,
moving in, what kind of drone does that look like?
yeah. It could be any drone from here. I'm looking at a fisheye wide angle
All
lens.
right.
It's probably a GoPro.
All right. So we're approaching the building. He gets up nice and close.
Yep.
Looks pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Now watch.
So we're approaching the building and we're going, okay, and now we're doing some crazy Dutch angle upside down world thing. And now we're booming up next to the building and the camera's flipping around. I'm flipping with it. And we're looking at the building still.
So, like,
This is a
the
trippy.
building has, like, a maze structure to it. The video is called Maze, but, like, the camera angle and the drone are following the maze, but, like, in ways where the drone can't fly. Like, it's just like, it has to be a 360 camera, I think,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It
but,
has to be a 360 camera based on the fact that the camera's like tilting and panning everywhere.
at least I don't think
But
he's flying 3D, but it's just like, what in the world?
maybe it's 3D. I love 3D flight, and people that do it well, it's like, yeah,
But
it's like
this is
level up.
I have
Okay,
never
now we're
seen 360 cameras look this fluid. And this will expose like there's like motion blur going on a little bit. It looks so good.
yeah, the lighting's really good. We got some nice like front lights, so it's nice and crispy. But there are some nice shadow. That building is incredible. First of all,
I know. I want to go fly
uh,
it so bad. Like there's gaps everywhere. And he doesn't even hit gaps. He's just flying up the side of it, and that's enough for me with the way that he filmed it, but it's like, oh, so good.
that's pretty cool, man. You know what, that is like totally new, and 360 cameras are unlocking this like new ability to frame and post. If that's what it is, I would put my money on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always a couple videos where it's like, damn, like how do you track? That's one of my biggest problems with like FPV is like subject tracking. It's like you can't. It's hard to you get when you're doing profile moves, you see some like Dutch angle on the horizon. But this guy's got it locked. He did a great job.
Yeah.
He or she did a great sharp
Sharp FPV.
FPV.
This video only has 68 views, but I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And
I love it.
this was just a few weeks ago. It's Taiwan. Taiwan
Wow.
is where it was filmed. I commented as soon as I
Yeah.
saw it. But yeah, just wanted to show you that video because it's like there's some pretty cool stuff happening in the world of FPV. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And that's where you just talked about like camera technology and how's that changing.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
these 360 cameras, I can't wait to hear about what you're doing with 360 cameras. But
Not enough. That's my short answer.
well, I mean, it came from a point where it's like, yeah, it was just too much of a compromise for like resolution and it just didn't look that good in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. The
Now
seam
it's
lines are there and stuff like that. Now
Mhm.
it's all starting to fade away. There's still the limitation of not being able to stop it down, right? Because for two reasons. One is like you have the full 360 fisheye, so like you can't put a filter over that. And
Mhm.
then if you do stop it down, once you start adding motion blur, the stitch becomes a lot harder. And so like you
Right.
have to like really heavily rely on like post processing, like shutter dragging to make it
Mhm.
look like get that smooth buttery look
More
that is so
more
hard to get with a 360 camera right now. Even if you like film at like the right time of day, once there's less light going in, there's like these weird motion blur artifacts that you can't get rid of. It's just like, oh, how do we fix that with 360 cameras? Because you could do some cool stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing now is you're seeing the reduction of the amount of of sensors on these things. So you're able to have a 360 camera with two sensors
Yep.
that's over 180-degree views, which is basically limiting the stitch points to whatever that is at
Yeah.
360.
One band all the way around.
360 versus like I've flown some heavy lift camera 360 cameras that are massive.
Yeah.
They're made up of like 8 or 12 GoPros or something like that. And my one buddy just flew a 360 camera rig made up of a bunch of Zcam E2s.
Oh my gosh.
It was heavy as hell.
Yeah.
So
He flew it
um, yeah,
on a
yeah,
drone.
yeah, on a
Holy
drone. It
cow.
was
It was
I think it was over.
indoors, so it was under 50. It didn't matter if it was over 55 pounds,
Yeah, totally.
right?
No, they're LA guys, so they have a different whatever. So I think they were far enough out in the Pacific,
I see.
international
I got you.
waters.
Yeah, of course.
So,
It's
but
for
it
a
was
cruise line.
huge. Yeah. And yeah, in that regard, it's all good, man. It's all game.
Yep.
So, but it was massive. So you're still seeing these rigs and these, these filmmakers that are choosing to pack in these like multi-camera arrays. But
Yeah.
is it better than a really well designed smaller camera with just two sensors? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, like what would happen if you took two like full frame sensors with a lens that's
Right.
180 and stitched that instead of trying to stitch 15 different cameras on, we'll have to
Hmm.
see. I'm sure there's some technologies like that on the way.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be cool for sure. And I haven't yet to fly a 360 camera on my racing mini quads, but I definitely want to for sure. I love the idea of like making the drone invisible is cool,
Yeah.
and you can tilt and pan, especially in like the cine whoop style shots where you're kind of just restricted to pushing or pulling in,
Yeah.
these certain moves. So
The so Insta360 is working on a technology for their latest camera, the 1R, that will take the two lenses, split it across the entire height of the drone, and then put the entire drone in the seam line. So they've already made a product for like the Mavic, and then they're also working on making like a standalone product for people to like DIY it. So like if you had your own drone that you wanted to do that to, I think that's coming pretty soon. So that should be pretty cool.
that is awesome. I mean, even in the world of like selfie stick stuff, the
Yeah.
360 cameras have like revolutionized that you can make the invisible selfie stick.
Yep.
It's cool. I mean, the coolest like backcountry like snowboarding selfie stick shots are from a 360 camera, I
Yeah.
feel like. So
You don't hardly need a drone. We're actually being just done in by selfie sticks.
selfie sticks and 360 cameras are taking over the world with that. I don't know. We'll see, but maybe. I mean, that's cool. I still like to say, "Hey, my job is secure,"
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
boom, coronavirus comes along, and you're like, "Damn." You got me this, Mother Nature.
Yeah, you Mother Nature.
You Mother
Anyway,
Nature.
I think it's probably a good time to start wrapping this up. We've
All right.
covered a lot. I mean, from introducing the show for the first time to figuring out who us two yahoos are and why we want to be opening these conversations. I think is going to be really really fun in the long term. I can't wait to next episode, and I think most episodes in the future are going to have some interview segments where we're going to pull in some other people from the industry to talk about
Oh
different
yeah.
things. I think our goal right now is to make this a weekly production. We're not sure when this first episode is going to go out, so be excited when it does drop. Again, all this is going to be available on YouTube as part of NURK.tv, so it's kind of presented by that, and then we're also going to
Nerd.tv.
Nerd.tv. And then we're going to also push it out to all the places that you would listen to your audio podcasts. So Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those kinds of things. So wherever you normally consume, please feel free to give us a rating there and all that kind of stuff and share it with your friends. We're excited to be trying to push out this new conversation in the world of
Oh yeah.
professional drones. You got
Please get
anything?
involved, comment, and like let us know what we can do better. I think that's what's so wonderful about YouTube is like the commenting there, and we'll try to read those and give us some feedback, and we'll respond to that stuff there.
Yep. Yeah, and we're gonna, part of this is, we would love to spend a bunch more, more than like the last 2 months that we spent planning this out, just kind of trying to, not do it. So we're kind of just launching in a little bit blind, a little bit free form. So like, if you have feedback on like what that format has been looking like and can look like in the future, don't hesitate to mention that, because we're still figuring it out, and we're going to continue to be figuring it out now and long into the future. So thank you
Yeah.
very much for listening. Anything you want to add, John?
Well, yeah, a little bit. Just maybe some plugs. Is there anything that you're working on that's coming out, or what do you want the people to see
Ooh.
right now?
I just put out 2 videos this week on Insta360 products, the Go and the 1R. Having a lot of fun putting those out. I finished up an
Awesome.
electric skateboard recently, which was pretty sweet.
Mm.
Pretty proud of how that turned out. And there's gonna be, I mean, I'm putting out content every single day during
Every day.
our little weird times that we found ourselves in. So it's been good. How about you?
I love that. First of all, that's great. I love that you're doing the 5 videos a week. That's a hell of a challenge, and it makes a lot of sense, and it gives people, um, you know, a little bit of break in these crazy times. And I'm thank you for doing that. It's a good diversion for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people.
Yeah,
So
my pleasure.
yeah, and it's not easy too, for sure.
No.
All right, so check out Billions season 5. There's some drone work on there that from your boy. So I think season 5 is dropping May 3rd. They just put out a trailer, and there's some like little drone shots in there.
Nice.
We did some really cool stuff in upstate New York in the wintertime with some plane. It looks like we were filming a plane, but it was like CGI, but we were the plane. It's cool. It
Nice.
should be a really nice shot, and it's like I'm waiting to see it like everybody else. So
Awesome.
Billion season 5 on Showtime next week.
Cool. Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us for this last probably hour or so. We're super excited about this. We've got like literally pages and pages of notes and ideas and things to talk about that are going to be coming out in the next number of episodes. Let me know what you think in the comments and all that stuff. And stay flying.
Yeah, baby.